The Lonely Path. Sara was 32 years old and lived in a small town. She worked as a librarian and loved reading books. Every day, she helped people find the books they needed and organized shelves. Sara's life was quiet and simple. But deep inside, she felt lonely. For many years, Sara believed she would never find love. All her friends were married or had boyfriends, but she was always alone. People often asked, "Why are you still single?" Sara would smile and say, "I'm too busy with work." But the truth was, she didn't know why. When she was younger, Sara dreamed of finding her soulmate. She thought love would come easily, like in the books she read. But as the years passed, she started to believe that love wasn't for her. Maybe I'm not beautiful enough, she thought. Maybe I'm too quiet, too boring. One evening, Sara was walking home from the library. It was winter, and the streets were covered in snow. She loved the sound of her boots crunching on the ice. As she walked past a small coffee shop, she noticed a man inside. He was sitting alone, holding a cup of coffee and reading a book. Sara stopped for a moment. The man looked calm and focused, and something about him made her curious. She wanted to go inside, but she felt nervous. What if he doesn't want to talk to me, she thought. Sara shook her head and kept walking. The next day, Sara couldn't stop thinking about the man. She told herself it was silly. He's just a stranger, she said. But deep down, she wished she had gone inside the coffee shop. A week later, Sara decided to visit the same coffee shop after work. She wasn't sure why. Maybe she wanted to see him again. Maybe she just needed a change. When she entered, the warm smell of coffee filled the air. She looked around, and there he was, sitting in the same spot, reading another book. Sara's heart raced. She ordered a cup of tea and sat at a table nearby. She pretended to read a book, but she kept glancing at him. After a while, the man looked up and noticed her. He smiled, and Sara quickly looked down, feeling her cheeks turn red. To her surprise, the man stood up and walked over to her table. "Hi," he said. "I couldn't help but notice the book you're reading. It's one of my favorites." Sara looked at him, her hands shaking a little. "Oh, really?" "I just started it," she replied softly. The man introduced himself as Daniel. They talked for a while about books, work, and life. Sara felt comfortable with him, like she had known him for years. Daniel told her he loved visiting the coffee shop to read because it was peaceful. Before Sara left, Daniel asked if they could meet again. Sara hesitated for a moment, but then she smiled and said, "I'd like that." Over the next few weeks, Sara and Daniel met often. They talked about everything, books, dreams, and even their fears. Sara started to feel something she hadn't felt in years, hope. One snowy evening, Daniel held Sara's hand as they walked through the park. "I'm glad I met you," he said. Sara looked at him, tears in her eyes. For the first time, she believed she wasn't meant to be alone forever. Love had found her when she least expected it. And Sara learned that sometimes, the best things in life happen when you take a small, brave step forward. Sara's life felt lighter after meeting Daniel. For the first time in years, she looked forward to her days, not because of work or books, but because of him. Every time they met at the coffee shop, they talked for hours. Daniel wasn't just kind, he was also funny, smart, and genuine. Sara loved the way he listened to her, as though every word she said mattered. One evening, as they sat by the window with warm drinks in their hands, Daniel asked, "Have you always lived here?" Sara nodded. "Yes. This town has been my home since I was a child. It's small, but I like it." "What about you?" Daniel smiled. "I moved here a few months ago. I needed a change. My old city was too busy, too noisy. I wanted somewhere quiet, somewhere I could focus on my writing." "Writing?" Sara asked, her eyes lighting up. He nodded. "I write stories, mostly fiction. It's been my dream since I was young, but it's not always easy. Sara was amazed. She had read countless stories in her life, but she had never met a writer before. That's incredible, she said. Have you published anything? Daniel laughed softly. Not yet. I've sent a few stories to publishers, but no luck so far. Still, I keep trying. Hearing Daniel's passion inspired Sara. She admired how he pursued his dreams, even when it was hard. As they talked more, she realized they had so much in common. They both loved books, quiet evenings, and the beauty of simple moments. Weeks turned into months, and Sara and Daniel grew closer. They started spending time outside the coffee shop, walking through snowy parks, visiting the town's small art gallery, and even cooking dinner together. Daniel introduced Sara to his world of writing, reading her some of his stories. She encouraged him, telling him his work was beautiful and deserved to be published. In return, Daniel helped Sara see herself differently. You're amazing, Sara, he told her one evening. You're kind, thoughtful, and so much stronger than you think. Sara felt tears in her eyes. She had spent so many years doubting herself, but Daniel made her believe she was enough, just as she was. One day, Daniel surprised Sara with a notebook. Its cover was soft leather, and her name was engraved on the front. What's this? She asked, running her fingers over the letters. It's for you, Daniel said. I know you love reading, but I think you could write, too. Your thoughts, your stories, whatever you want. Sara hesitated. Me? Write? I don't know. Why not? Daniel said. You have so much to share, Sara. Trust me. That night, Sara opened the notebook. At first, she didn't know what to write, but then the words started to flow. She wrote about her life, her dreams, and her fears. For the first time, she let her thoughts pour onto the page, and it felt freeing. As the seasons changed and winter turned to spring, Sara and Daniel's bond deepened. But Sara still had moments of doubt. She often wondered if this happiness would last. What if he realizes I'm not enough for him, she thought. One evening, as they walked along a quiet path in the park, Sara finally voiced her fear. Daniel, she said softly, why did you choose me? Out of all the people you could meet, why me? Daniel stopped walking and turned to face her. His eyes were warm and steady. Sara, I didn't choose you. Love isn't about choosing, it's about feeling. From the moment I saw you at the coffee shop, I felt something. You're not just someone I care about, you're someone I admire. You see the world in a way that makes it brighter, and you've made my life better just by being in it. Tears filled Sara's eyes as she realized how much she meant to him. In that moment, her doubts began to fade. By the summer, Daniel received good news. One of his stories had been accepted for publication. When he told Sara, she hugged him tightly. I knew it, she said. I'm so proud of you. Daniel smiled. And it's because of you, Sara. You believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. Their love story wasn't like the ones Sara had read in books. It wasn't filled with dramatic moments or grand gestures. Instead, it was built on quiet understanding, shared dreams, and the courage to open their hearts. One evening, as the sun set over the town, Daniel took Sara's hand and said, I have one more story I want to write. It's about us, about how I found love in the most unexpected place. Sara smiled, her heart full. And I'll help you write it, she said. Together, they began a new chapter in their lives, proving that love doesn't always come when you expect it, but when you're ready to let it in.